Do you think you can just come here and play the hero? Carter Blake clenched his fists, his voice trembling with rage. You have no idea who you're messing with, old man. Michael Harrison slowly lifted his gaze from the scattered papers on the floor. His calm eyes met the fiery, angry eyes of the 18-year-old. Carter, he said quietly, and there was something in his voice that sent a chill down the boy's spine. You're right. You really don't know who you're messing with. Behind Carter, his friends, Jake Martinez and Dylan Cooper, had gathered. All three were stars of the school football team, the kings of Riverside High School. No one ever dared to stand up to them. What do you mean by that? Jake hissed, pulling out his phone to record everything. Michael slowly rose from his knees where he had been picking up his things after yet another joke from the teenagers. His movements were smooth, precise, too precise for an ordinary school teacher. What I mean, he took a step forward, and something in his eyes made even Carter take a step back, is that some people come into your life to teach you a lesson, and some to become a lesson for others. Are you threatening us? Dylan's voice trembled treacherously. Michael smiled sadly. No, Dylan, I'm warning you, for the last time. The best part is yet to come. Stay with us to find out how it all ended. Meanwhile, like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out. Monday, 7 in the morning, Milford, Connecticut. Riverside High School greeted the new day with the usual chaos of teenage voices, slamming lockers, and the pounding of feet in the hallways. Michael Harrison stood in front of the main entrance of the school, gripping a worn leather briefcase. At 43, he looked like a tired man who had been through a lot in life. Gray hair at his temples, deep wrinkles around his eyes, slightly hunched shoulders. Nothing gave away his former military background. None of the passing students paid him any attention. Just another middle-aged teacher, another forgotten face in their world of social media and teenage dramas. School principal Robert Anderson met Michael in the main office with a strained smile of a man who has to deal with too many problems at once. Mr. Harrison, welcome to Riverside. I hope the move went smoothly? Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Everything is fine. Michael shook the offered hand, noting the nervous twitch of the principal's eyelid. Good, good. I must warn you about some peculiarities of our students. Anderson cleared his throat nervously, especially about some 12th graders. Carter Blake, Jake Martinez, Dylan Cooper. How should I put it? Troublesome? Michael clarified calmly. Influential, the principal corrected. Their parents are on the school board, very generous donors. You understand what I mean? Michael nodded. He understood better than Anderson could possibly imagine. The previous English teacher, Mr. Collins, unfortunately could not find common ground with these boys. I hope you will fare better. What happened to Mr. Collins? Anderson avoided a direct answer. Nervous exhaustion, early retirement for health reasons. Michael mentally noted this information. In his 20 years as an educator, he had encountered many similar cases. Room 237 was located in the far wing of the school. Michael pushed the door open and entered the spacious room with large windows and rows of desks. On the board, obscene drawings and inscriptions were scrawled in chalk. Clearly yesterday's gifts from the students. Michael calmly erased the board and began to arrange his few belongings. A few books, a stack of notebooks, a framed photo, a family picture where he was embracing a young woman and a little girl. He turned the photo face down against the wall. Two painful memories. At 8 o'clock, the bell rang and students began to enter the classroom. Most looked like ordinary teenagers. Some interested, some bored, some outright sleepy after an early rise. But when Carter Blake appeared in the doorway with his friends, the atmosphere in the classroom instantly changed. Carter was a tall guy with an athletic build, perfectly styled dark hair, and a confident smile. He wore the signature jacket of the school football team, adorned with badges and patches. Jake and Dylan flanked him on either side, like bodyguards for a celebrity. The other students instinctively parted, clearing a path for them to the back rows. So, began Michael once everyone was settled, my name is Mr. Harrison. I am your new English language and literature teacher. Carter yawned dramatically and propped his feet up on the desk of the student in front of him. This semester we will be studying works that raise questions of justice, moral choice, and the consequences of our actions. Boring, Jake loudly commented, eliciting chuckles from several classmates. Michael continued as if he hadn't heard. Let's start with a simple question. What is true strength? Who can answer? Emma Richardson, sitting in the front row, raised her hand. I think true strength is the ability to help those who are weaker than you. Great answer, Miss Richardson. Michael nodded approvingly. Nonsense, scoffed Carter. Strength is when everyone is afraid of you, when you can do whatever you want and no one dares to contradict you. Interesting perspective, Mr. Blake. Michael turned to him. What do you think about hidden strength? About people who seem weak but actually possess incredible power? Those don't exist, Carter declared confidently. If you're strong, you show it. Everything else is just weaklings trying to look cool. Michael slowly nodded. We will come back to this question. As soon as the bell rang to end the lesson, Carter stood up and headed for the exit. As he passed the teacher's desk, he accidentally knocked Michael's backpack, causing it to fall to the floor and spill its contents. Oh, sorry, Carter said with feigned regret. What a nuisance. His friends snickered, and the other students hurriedly left the classroom, not wanting to get caught up in the conflict. Michael calmly knelt down and began to gather the papers. Among them were documents that an ordinary school teacher shouldn't have. Papers marked confidential, photographs of military operations, letters from high-ranking officials. Fortunately, the teenagers were too busy basking in their own superiority to notice the details. Only Emma Richardson lingered in the classroom. Mr. Harrison, I'm really sorry. They do this to all new teachers. Don't worry, Miss Richardson. I've faced more serious problems. They won't stop, the girl warned. Mr. Collins thought he could reform them. In the end, he had to be taken away in an ambulance right during class. He had a nervous breakdown when Carter brought a rat to class and let it run down his shirt. Michael looked up from the papers he was collecting. A rat? They said it was an experiment to study human reactions to stress. The principal didn't punish them. Carter's parents donated a new wing to the library. I see. Michael finished gathering his things and stood up. Thank you for the warning, Emma. Just be careful, okay? They can go very far. After the girl left, Michael was alone in the empty classroom. He walked to the window and looked down at the schoolyard. There, Carter and his friends were animatedly arguing about something, occasionally pointing toward the second-floor windows. Michael took out his mobile phone and scrolled through his contacts. Among them were numbers for social workers, child psychologists, and specialists in dealing with troubled teenagers, people he had collaborated with throughout his teaching career. For 20 years of working in various schools, he had encountered hundreds of children like Carter, Jake, and Dylan. Most of them just needed the right approach and understanding. But some went too far, like his own daughter. Michael involuntarily touched the photograph on the table. Emily was only 14 when a group of high school students pushed her to the point that he still couldn't think about it without pain. After that tragedy, he dedicated his life to ensuring that it would never happen again. He studied adolescent psychology, methods for working with aggressive children, and became an expert in school bullying. And now he saw all the signs of an impending disaster. The afternoon brought new challenges. During lunch break, Michael headed to the teacher's lounge to eat. But when he opened his food container, a nauseating smell wafted out. Someone had added a dead mouse to his salad. Problems, Mr. Harrison? He heard a familiar voice behind him. Michael turned around. Carter stood in the doorway with an innocent expression on his face. No problems, Mr. Blake. Just checking the quality of school food. Yeah, sometimes it comes with surprises. Carter smirked. By the way, I heard you were military? Or a former military. Where did you hear that? Oh, so it's true? Carter's eyes lit up with a hunter's excitement. Interesting. Which wars did you participate in? Iraq? Afghanistan? Michael closed the container with the spoiled food. I teach English, Mr. Blake. My past has nothing to do with literature lessons. But it has to do with why you're here, right? Carter stepped closer. You know what I think? I think you're one of those losers who couldn't find themselves in the real world and came to teach kids. A typical story for weaklings. Maybe you're right, Michael calmly agreed. Carter expected aggression, anger, an attempt to assert authority. But such a reaction confused him. Although, Michael continued, heading for the exit, the most dangerous people often look just like losers. Remember that. After he left, Carter stood in the teacher's lounge, pondering those words. The next English lesson turned into a real trial. Carter, Jake, and Dylan did everything they could to disrupt the class. They threw paper, imitated animal sounds, fell off their chairs, pretending to faint. Michael continued the lesson as if nothing was happening. He talked about William Golding's novel Lord of the Flies, a story about how civilized children turn into savages when rules and adult authority disappear. It's interesting to note, he said, scanning the class, that the main antagonist of the novel, Jack, wasn't the strongest or smartest boy, but he understood the psychology of the crowd. He knew how to manipulate the fears and desires of other children. Carter stopped his antics and listened attentively. Jack created a cult of power and cruelty, but in the end, his empire collapsed because it was built on fear, not respect. Fear is a very unreliable foundation for power. What happened to Jack in the end? Dylan suddenly asked. He was rescued, Michael replied, but the rescue came from outside. Adults intervened and stopped the chaos. Jack couldn't handle the consequences of his actions on his own. Carter frowned. He felt that the teacher was speaking not just about literature. After the lesson, when most of the students had left, only one boy remained in the classroom. Aaron Wells, a thin 17-year-old boy in glasses, nervously fiddled with the strap of his backpack. "Mr. Harrison?" he quietly called. "Can I talk to you?" "Of course, Aaron. What's the matter?" The boy looked around the door, making sure they were alone. "They make me do their homework. Carter and his friends, for 6 months now." Michael set down his pen and looked closely at the teenager. "Tell me more." "At first, they just copied from me. Then they started demanding that I do their work completely. They said that if I refused..." Aaron fell silent. "What did they say?" "That they will publish online the photos they took in the locker room after gym class. Compromising photos." The boy's voice trembled with shame. "And they also took my phone and found personal messages with one guy. We're just friends, but they are blackmailing you." "Yes, and not just me. I know a few other people they are doing this too, but no one dares to complain." Michael nodded silently, processing the information. "Mr. Harrison, I'm not asking you to intervene. Just, if they ask you to change their grades or something like that, please don't agree. I don't want another teacher to suffer because of me." "Aaron," Michael leaned forward, "do you know what blackmail is? It's when someone forces you to do something by threatening to expose you." "Correct. And do you know that blackmail is a serious crime? And that people who engage in it usually don't stop at one victim?" Aaron nodded. "I understand. But what can I do? My dad works for Carter's dad. If this comes out..." "Your dad works for Richard Blake?" "Yes. He's the chief accountant at his construction company. If Mr. Blake wants, he can fire my dad at any moment." Michael stood up and walked to the window. Outside, it was already starting to get dark. The short winter day was coming to an end. "Aaron, you know what I'm going to tell you? Sometimes the only way to stop a predator is to show them that you can be dangerous too." "But I'm not dangerous. I wouldn't hurt a fly." Michael turned to him with a mysterious smile. "And I don't need you to be dangerous. It's enough that I will be." Aaron blinked in confusion. "What do you mean?" "Nothing for now, just trust me, okay? And remember, blackmailers are afraid of only one thing." "What?" "That their secrets will also become public." That evening, Michael sat in his rented apartment near the school, studying files on his laptop. The screen displayed detailed dossiers on all 3 teenagers, the result of the work of people who knew how to find information about anyone. Carter Blake, 18 years old, son of the owner of the largest construction company in the state, captain of the football team, excellent grades thanks to bribed teachers, and homework done by others. In his free time, he sells drugs among classmates. 2 undisclosed incidents involving driving under the influence. Jake Martinez, 17 years old, adopted son of Judge Martinez. Issues with aggression under the care of a psychiatrist. Suspected in several cases of animal cruelty, but charges were dropped due to the influence of his adoptive father. Dylan Cooper, 18 years old. Mother is a state congresswoman. Father is a well-known lawyer. Serious gambling problems, owes a large sum to the local mafia. Parents are unaware of his debts. Each had their weakness. Each had secrets that could ruin their lives. Michael's phone rang. "Harrison here." "How's school?" asked a familiar voice without introduction. "The situation is worse than we thought. This is not just school bullying. This is organized crime with minors in leading roles. Blackmail? Blackmail, drug dealing, possibly coercion into prostitution. I'm still checking the details." "How many victims?" "At least 7 people I've already identified, probably more." Pause. "Proceed with protocol number 3. "Are you sure?" "Protocol 3 means complete exposure. These kids could become tomorrow's serial killers or terrorists. Better to stop them now. Understood. Michael hung up and looked back at the laptop screen. Protocol number 3 meant he was no longer restricted in his methods. All means were considered permissible. He opened a new file and began drafting a plan. The next morning, Carter woke up to the ringing of his phone. It was the school administration. Mr. Blake, this is Mrs. Hendricks from the office. You need to come to school with your parents for an urgent meeting with the principal. What's it about? Complaints have been filed about your behavior. Several students and their parents have approached the administration. Carter felt his stomach tighten with fear. What complaints? You will find out at the meeting. We expect you in an hour. The line went dead. With trembling hands, Carter began scrolling through his contacts on his phone, searching for Jake's number. Jake, we need to meet. Right now. But when he got to his friend's house, he found out that Jake had received a similar call. Someone had reported him to the juvenile services for his aggressive behavior at school. Dylan was also in a panic. His mother received an anonymous call from a concerned parent who reported that her son was extorting money from younger students. With trembling hands, Carter began scrolling through his contacts on his phone, searching for Jake's number. Jake, we need to meet. Right now. But when he got to his friend's house, he found out that Jake had received a similar call. Someone knew about his visits to the psychiatrist, about hidden acts of cruelty, about him forging health certificates. Dylan was also in a panic. The caller knew about his debts, where he was getting money, and even that he was stealing from his mother's wallet. This can't be a coincidence, Carter said as they gathered in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Someone is systematically attacking all of us. But who? Jake paced nervously. Who could know so much? The only newcomer in our lives is the new teacher, Dylan said slowly. Harrison, come on, he's a total loser. But remember what he said about the most dangerous people? Carter frowned. That they often look like losers? Silence hung in the air. We need to check, Carter finally said. We need to find out who this Michael Harrison really is. Chapter 4. Revealing the cards. The atmosphere at school was strange. Carter, Jake, and Dylan were behaving unusually quietly. They had stopped bullying weaker students, didn't cause disruptions in class, and even greeted the teachers. Aaron Wells approached Michael after the second English lesson. Mr. Harrison, something incredible has happened. Carter returned all the money he made me steal from home, and he deleted all the compromising photos from my phone. That's wonderful, Aaron. But I don't understand why. What happened? Michael shrugged. Maybe he just grew up. Or someone made him do it. Aaron looked closely at the teacher. Mr. Harrison, are you really just an English teacher? What else could I be? I don't know. But regular teachers can't change people so quickly. Michael smiled. Sometimes people change themselves when they understand the consequences of their actions. After class, Michael stayed in the classroom, grading notebooks. He knew they were coming. Sure enough, half an hour later, the door opened, and all three entered the classroom. But this time there was no sign of their previous aggression. They looked scared and confused. Mr. Harrison, Carter began, we need to talk. Of course. Have a seat. The teenagers sat in the front row, which was unusual. Usually they took seats at the back of the class. It was you, wasn't it? Carter asked directly. The calls this morning? What calls? Don't pretend. We know it was you. Michael set down his pen and looked at them intently. Let's say it was me. And what's next? Who are you? Jake blurted out. You're not an ordinary teacher. What makes you think that? Ordinary teachers don't know such details about students' lives, Dylan said, and they can't obtain information that's impossible to get. Michael stood up from behind the desk and walked to the window. You know, boys, there's a profession dedicated to protecting people from predators. Sometimes predators wear military uniforms and shoot automatic weapons. And sometimes they wear school uniforms and use psychological pressure. Are you a spy? Carter asked distrustfully. I am the one who stops people from hurting the innocent. Michael turned to face them, and the teenagers saw something in his eyes that made them shrink in their chairs. In the past 2 years, 3 students at this school have attempted suicide. 5 have transferred to other schools. 2 ended up in a psychiatric hospital. And all of this is the result of the actions of one group of students. We didn't force anyone to kill themselves, Jake protested. No? Then tell me about Timmy Johnson. The teenagers exchanged glances. Timmy Johnson was a student in their class last year. a quiet, withdrawn boy whom they regularly bullied. Timmy just moved away, Dylan said uncertainly. Timmy tried to hang himself in the basement of his house, Michael coldly stated, after you posted the video online of him crying in the school bathroom. His younger sister saved him. Silence. And Sarah Mitchell? Do you remember her? What happened to her? Carter croaked. She is still on antidepressants after you spread rumors about her personal life. Rumors that led her parents to send her to a closed school for troubled teens. Michael stepped closer to them, and all three instinctively recoiled. Want to know who I am? I am a teacher with 20 years of experience in tough schools. A man who lost his own daughter due to bullying similar to what you are doing. The teenagers froze. My Emily was 14 when a group of high school students drove her to attempt suicide. She survived, but the psychological scars remain forever. Michael paused, gathering his strength. After that incident, I studied everything I could about teenage aggression, school bullying, the psychology of victims and aggressors. I became an expert in this field. He looked at each of them. And when I see kids like you, I know exactly where this will lead if I don't intervene. What do you want from us? Carter asked quietly. I want you to understand a simple truth. Your behavior destroys lives. And if you don't stop, you will eventually destroy your own. What do you want from us? Carter asked quietly. I want you to understand a simple truth. Your behavior has consequences, and those consequences can be much more serious than you think. Michael stood up and approached the board, where he wrote one word: choice. Each of you has a choice. You can continue to be predators and end up in prison or a psychiatric hospital, or you can change your life starting from this moment. What if we don't want to change? Carter asked defiantly. Michael turned to him with an expression that made the teenager regret his words. Then I will make it so that you have no other choice. That evening, Carter sat in his room, trying to process what had happened. His phone lay on the table, and he was afraid to even touch it. What if that person with the distorted voice called again? His father entered the room without knocking, a habit that used to annoy Carter but now frightened him. Son, I need to talk to you. Richard Blake was a man of impressive stature, accustomed to being obeyed without question. He had built a construction empire practically from scratch, and his business methods were not always legal. I received a strange phone call today, he began, sitting on the edge of the bed. Someone told me some very interesting information about your school activities. Carter froze. What information? That my son is involved in blackmail and drug dealing right at school. His father's voice was deceptively calm. Can you imagine what a blow this could deal to our family's reputation? Dad, I can explain everything. Explain? Richard stood up. You think I'm a fool? Do you think I don't know what you're spending the money I give you for pocket expenses on? Carter realized he had walked into a trap. Whoever had called that morning clearly wasn't limited to just him. But you know what's most interesting? This person didn't demand money, didn't blackmail me. He just gave advice. What advice? You'd better focus on raising your son before it's too late. Richard stepped closer. And you know what? He's right. The punch hit Carter in the face before he could understand what was happening. He fell to the floor, pressing his hand to his burning cheek. You've shamed the family, you bastard, Richard growled. Did you think Daddy would always protect you? That my money would solve all your problems? Richard grabbed his son by the shirt and lifted him to his feet. Starting tomorrow, you will work on the construction site, after school, on weekends, during breaks. You'll carry bags of cement until you understand the value of money and hard work. But Dad, no buts. And you will go to each person you've hurt tomorrow and apologize, publicly, in front of witnesses. Carter stared at his father with wide eyes. He was used to Richard always covering for his misdeeds, always being on his side against the world. You don't understand, do you? Richard smirked. You think this is unfair? Do you know what the person who called me promised to do if you don't change? Carter remained silent. He said that if you're not a different person in a week, all your secrets will become public knowledge. And then my money and connections won't help you. Then you'll go to juvenile detention, and after that, to adult prison. Richard headed for the door but stopped at the threshold. And you know what's the scariest part? I'm starting to think that maybe this will be for the best. The door slammed, leaving Carter alone with his thoughts and a burning cheek. At the same time, Jake was sitting in the office of the family psychiatrist, Dr. Stephen Wright. His foster parents had brought him here after a similar phone call. Jake, the doctor said gently, your parents are very worried. They were informed about some incidents at school. Who told them? That's not important. What's important is that you've been hiding serious aggression issues from us. Jake shifted nervously in his chair. He hated these sessions, hated how the doctor looked at him as if examining him under a microscope. I was told about the cat, the doctor continued. Jake paled. What cat? The one you tortured in the garage last summer. The neighbors saw. I didn't. Jake, lying will only make things worse. I have photographs. The doctor opened a folder and showed pictures that made the teenager turn away. Do you know what this is called in psychiatry? Sadism. And if it's not treated, it progresses. First animals, then people. I don't want to kill anyone, but you want to cause pain. Admit it, at least to yourself. Jake remained silent, clenching his fists. Your foster parents want to place you in a specialized facility for teenagers with behavioral problems, the doctor said, and I think that's the right decision. No, Jake shouted. Not that. There are real psychos in there. And how are you any better than them? The doctor asked calmly. Meanwhile, Dylan was sitting at home at the kitchen table across from his parents. His mother, Congresswoman Elizabeth Cooper, looked as if she had aged 10 years in one day. $80,000, she repeated. You owe $80,000 to people who kill for lesser amounts. His father, attorney Robert Cooper, silently studied the documents they had received. It says here that you took money from my purse, his mother continued. From Dad's, from Grandma's pension, even from the homeless assistance fund that I manage. Mom, I can pay it all back. With what? His father exploded. You have no job. You have no skills. You can't even study properly in school without outside help. Dylan lowered his head. He knew his parents were right. You know what hurts me the most? His mother said quietly. It's not that you stole. It's not that you played. And the fact that you made other kids suffer to cover your debts. She pulled out photographs from her purse. These are pictures of the children that you and your friends drove to a nervous breakdown. Look at them. Dylan reluctantly raised his eyes. The photographs showed children with empty, dull eyes. Children who looked much older than their years. This girl is 14, the mother pointed to one of the photographs. 14, and she has already tried to take her own life twice. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, shouted the father. You didn't care about anyone but yourself. Robert stood up and began to pace the kitchen. Tomorrow morning, you are going to the police and confessing everything. To blackmail, to extortion, to everything. But then they'll arrest me. And they should. Elizabeth also stood up. Maybe prison is the only place where you'll finally understand that your actions have consequences. Mom, please, no! The mother's voice was as cold as ice. I have fought for justice my whole life, and I will not allow my own son to turn that fight into a farce. She headed for the kitchen exit but stopped at the door. And tomorrow you are also going to a psychiatrist, because normal people do not take pleasure in the suffering of others. The next morning, all three teenagers arrived at school changed. Carter had a bruise under his eye, Jake had red, tear-filled eyes, and Dylan had trembling hands. They gathered in an empty classroom before classes started. We're done for, Carter said quietly. Our parents know everything. Mine want to send me to a mental hospital, Jake added. And mine want to send me to prison, Dylan whispered. Silence fell. What do we do now? Jake asked. I don't know, Carter honestly replied. For the first time in my life, I don't know. The door opened and Michael Harrison walked into the classroom. He looked as calm as ever, but there was something new in his eyes. Satisfaction. Good morning, boys. How was your evening? Carter looked up, and for the first time, Michael saw real fear in his eyes. You ruined our lives, the teenager croaked. No, Michael replied calmly, closing the door behind him. You ruined your own lives. I just showed everyone the truth. Jake jumped up. My parents want to take away my custody rights because of you. Because you tortured animals and bullied weaker kids. Michael corrected him. Your parents just found out who they were really raising. Dylan quietly cried, burying his face in his hands. Mom said I am dead to her, that she no longer has a son. Michael stepped closer. And you know what? She's right. The person you were should die, so that someone new can be born. You're insane, Carter shouted, standing up. You're a sick bastard who takes pleasure in other people's pain. Michael stopped 2 steps away from him. Want to know who takes pleasure in other people's pain? Look in the mirror. I'm not like that. No? Michael pulled out his phone and played a video. Then explain this to me. The screen showed a video recorded by a hidden camera. Carter, Jake, and Dylan were beating a skinny boy in the school bathroom. The sound was on, and they could hear them laughing at his cries for help. Where did you get this? Jake gasped. I have recordings of everything you did over the last 2 years. Every act of bullying, every act of cruelty. Michael put the phone away. Want to know how many kids suffered at your hands? 23. 23 children whose lives you broke for fun. Dylan raised his tear-streaked face. We didn't want to. Didn't want to? Michael's voice turned icy. You didn't want to when you forced Aaron Wells to eat from the trash can? Didn't want to when you published intimate photos of Sarah Mitchell? Didn't want to when you drove Timmy Johnson to attempt suicide? Each word was like a knife stab. But you know what the scariest thing is? Michael continued. You still don't understand the scale of what you've done. You only think about yourselves, about your problems, about your pain. He looked at them. None of you thought about what your victims feel? Carter clenched his fists. Enough! I won't listen to this anymore. He rushed to the door, but Michael was quicker. His hand landed on the teenager's shoulder, and he froze, feeling the iron grip. Sit down, Michael said quietly. And there was something in his voice that made Carter comply without protest. Now listen to me carefully. Michael returned to the board and wrote one word on it. Price. Every action has a price, and it's time to pay the bills. What do you mean by that? Dylan stammered. Michael turned to them, and there was not a trace of humanity left in his eyes. I mean, your story's not over yet. What happened yesterday is just the beginning. He pulled a thick folder from his bag and placed it on the table. Michael took out several sheets of paper and laid them on the table. This is a community service agreement, a rehabilitation program for troubled teens. What kind of work? Jake asked cautiously. You will be helping at the local orphanage. Every day after school, 3 hours. Every weekend, 6 hours. For 4 months. And what if we refuse? Dylan tried to bluff. Michael calmly took out his phone. Then I will call the parents of every child you bullied. I will tell them the details of what you did to their children. And then those parents will go to the police with statements. He showed them a contact list. I have the numbers of 32 families, 32 children who have become your victims over the past 2 years. The teenagers turned pale. Blackmail of minors, extortion, coercion to steal, psychological abuse. All of this carries criminal liability, even for minors. Michael handed each of them a pen. Choose 4 months of community service or years in a juvenile detention center. He showed them one of the photos, Carter handing a bag of drugs to a younger student. Can you imagine the headlines? Son of a local magnate sells drugs at school. Adopted son of a judge, sadist and animal killer. Daughter of a congressman raised an extortionist and blackmailer. The teenagers turned even paler. Your parents will lose their jobs. Your families will become outcasts. And you will spend the next few years in a juvenile detention center. Carter grabbed the pen with a trembling hand. You bastard. Maybe, Michael agreed, but I'm a bastard who protects the innocent from people like you. One by one, the teenagers signed the documents. Great, Michael gathered the papers. Tomorrow at 4 in the afternoon, you will report to the Hope Orphanage on Main Street. Mrs. Garcia, the director, will be waiting for you. She will explain your duties. And what will we do there? Jake asked grimly. You will learn what it feels like to be defenseless. You will understand what it means to depend on the kindness of others. Maybe for the first time in your life, you will understand what your victims feel. Michael headed for the exit but stopped at the door. And remember, I will be watching your every move. The slightest violation, the slightest attempt to slip away, and the agreement will be voided. After he left, the 3 teenagers sat in deafening silence. What have we done? Dylan finally whispered. No one answered. They didn't know themselves. The Hope Orphanage was located in an old building on the outskirts of town. The paint was peeling, the windows were taped up, and the roof was leaking. This place was meant for children that no one wanted. Orphans, relinquished children, victims of domestic violence. Carter, Jake, and Dylan stood in front of the entrance, hesitating to go in. What if we run away? Jake suggested. Where to? Carter scoffed bitterly. He'll find us anywhere. The door opened, and an elderly Latina woman in a simple dress stepped out. It was Mrs. Garcia, the director of the orphanage. "Are you three from school?" she asked with a slight accent. The teenagers nodded. "Come in. We have a lot of work to do." Inside, the orphanage looked even worse. Cracked walls, old furniture, the smell of dampness and something sour. In the corridors, children of various ages were running around, from toddlers to teenagers. They all looked tired, sad, and lost. "There are 43 children living here," Mrs. Garcia explained. "We have only 4 staff members. We really need the help of volunteers." She led them through the rooms. Each room had 6 to 8 beds, placed almost side by side. The children had almost no personal belongings, only the bare essentials. "This is Maria," the director introduced an 8-year-old girl with big sad eyes. "Her mother died of an overdose. She doesn't know her father." The girl pressed herself against the wall in fear, looking at the strangers. "And this is James," she pointed to a 12-year-old boy with a scar on his face. "He was beaten by his stepfather. His arm was broken in 3 places." Jake turned away. He couldn't look at the scar. "Your task is to help the children with their homework, feed them, play with them, read them bedtime stories. In general, to be the older brothers they never had." She stopped in front of the teenagers' room. "But remember, these children have seen things no child should ever see. They do not trust adults. It will be hard for them to accept you." The door to the room was slightly ajar, and quiet voices could be heard from inside. Carter peeked in and saw a group of teenagers sitting on the floor in a circle. They were whispering to each other, occasionally casting wary glances toward the door. "What are they doing?" he asked. "Sharing their stories," Mrs. Garcia replied quietly. "It helps them cope with their trauma." One of the teenagers, a 16-year-old boy with a shaved head and tattoos on his arms, looked up and stared directly at Carter. "Hey, newcomers," he shouted. "Come on in, don't be shy." Carter, Jake, and Dylan entered the room hesitantly. The other teenagers studied them with curiosity and distrust. "I'm Marcus," the tattooed boy introduced himself. "And this is our merry band of misfits." He pointed to the others. A slender girl with short black hair, an Asian boy with frightened eyes, and a red-haired girl who looked about 14. "So, tell us what brought you to our paradise?" Carter, Jake, and Dylan exchanged glances. How could they explain to these kids that they were here as punishment? "We are volunteers," Carter finally said. Marcus burst out laughing. "Volunteers? Seriously? I thought you escaped from a juvenile detention center." "Why do you think that?" Jake tensed up. "Because it's written all over your faces. I did bad things," Marcus smirked. "Trust me, I know this. I was just like you." He rolled up his sleeve and showed the scars on his forearm. "See this? I cut myself when I was feeling bad. And I felt bad every day since my father started messing with me." An awkward silence fell. "Now it's your turn," Marcus continued. "What did you do?" Carter felt his cheeks burning with shame. These children, who had experienced real horrors, were looking at him with expectation. And he had to admit that he had bullied other kids for fun. "We did bad things at school," he said quietly. "What kind of things?" Marcus pressed on. Dylan couldn't take it anymore. "We bullied weaker kids, humiliated them, made them give us money." The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The teenagers tensed up, their faces turning cold. "So you're those bastards," Marcus said slowly. "The ones responsible for kids ending up here." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "Do you see that girl?" Marcus nodded toward the red-haired girl. "Her name is Emily. She ended up here after a group of high school seniors drove her to a nervous breakdown at her old school. Just like you." Emily shrank back upon hearing her name. "And Kevin," he pointed to the Asian boy, "ran away from home after school bullies posted a video online of him getting beaten up. His parents blamed him, not the bullies." Carter felt something break inside him. "We didn't know," he began. "Didn't know," Marcus exploded, "or didn't want to know. You didn't care what happened to your victims after you played with them?" He stood up and stepped closer. "Do you know what is the most terrifying thing for a child who is being bullied? It's not the pain itself. It's that they start to believe they deserve it, that they are truly worthless, unworthy of respect and love." Marcus pointed to the scars on his arm. "This is what happens to the children you break. They start to hurt themselves because they think they don't deserve better." Jake turned away, unable to look at the scars. "And some," Marcus continued, "just end it all, like my brother." He pulled a photograph from his pocket and showed it to them. It was a boy about 14 with a kind smile. His name was Tommy, He hanged himself in his room after classmates filmed him being beaten in the bathroom and posted it online. Tears welled up in Dylan's eyes. He was only 14. Marcus's voice trembled. He wanted to be a doctor, to help people. But instead, he decided the world would be better off without him. Marcus tucked the photograph away. So don't tell me you didn't know. You just didn't want to think about the consequences. A heavy silence hung in the room. Carter, Jake, and Dylan sat with their heads down, unsure of what to say. But you know what? Marcus suddenly said. You have a chance to make it right. How? Carter asked hoarsely. By helping kids like us, showing them that not all older kids are complete bastards. He extended his hand to Carter. My name is Marcus, and if you really want to change, I'm ready to help you. The first days at the shelter became a real hell for the three teenagers. The children didn't trust them, the caregivers were suspicious, and the work itself turned out to be much harder than they had expected. Carter helped the little ones with their homework, but they constantly got distracted, cried, and demanded attention. He was used to having his wishes fulfilled without question, but here he had to show patience, something he had never had. Jake worked in the kitchen, washing dishes and helping to prepare food. The physical work exhausted him. His hands were covered in cuts from the cleaning supplies, and his back ached from standing at the sink all the time. Dylan read bedtime stories to the children, but when he saw their frightened, distrustful eyes, his voice betrayed him and trembled. These children reminded him of what his own victims had been like. At the end of the first week, Mrs. Garcia called them into her office. How's it going? She asked. It's tough, Carter admitted honestly. That's good. If it were easy, you wouldn't learn anything. She pulled a folder from her desk drawer. Do you want to see the files of the children you're working with? The teenagers exchanged glances and nodded. Mrs. Garcia opened the first file. Maria, 8 years old. Her mother died of a drug overdose when the girl was 5. She lived with her grandmother for 2 years until the grandmother was hospitalized with a stroke. She spent the last year in 3 different foster homes. She was returned each time. Why? Dylan asked. Nightmares, bedwetting, panic attacks, common symptoms of post-traumatic stress in children. She turned the page. James, 12 years old. His stepfather systematically beat him for 4 years. His mother knew but did nothing. The boy ended up in the hospital with a broken arm and internal injuries. Only then did social services intervene. Carter felt a lump in his throat. Kevin, 15 years old. He came from South Korea with his parents 2 years ago. He was constantly bullied at school because of his accent and appearance. Classmates filmed him being beaten and posted it on social media. His parents blamed him for bringing shame to the family. Jake clenched his fists. He recognized his own actions in this story. Emily, 14 years old. A group of high school girls at her school created a fake social media page where they posted insulting messages in her name. The girl became an outcast, lost all her friends. She tried to take her own life by taking her mother's pills. Dylan covered his face with his hands. Do you want to know what all these children have in common? Mrs. Garcia asked. The teenagers were silent. They all believe they deserve to be treated badly, that they are unworthy of love and respect. That's what bullying does to children. She closed the folder. Each of these children could have become a doctor, a teacher, an artist. But instead, they are fighting just to survive. Carter raised his head. How can we help them? Show them that they are worthy of love, that someone cares about them, that they are not alone. Mrs. Garcia stood up. Now go to work. And remember, every word you say, every gesture you make can be a ray of hope for these children, or yet another wound. 3 weeks passed. Carter, Jake, and Dylan gradually got used to working at the shelter. The children began to trust them, although some still remained cautious. That evening, Carter was helping 7-year-old Michael with drawing. The boy was very quiet, hardly spoke, and always kept to himself away from the other children. What are you drawing? Carter asked. Michael showed his drawing. It depicted a family, a mom, a dad, and a little boy. They were all smiling. Is this your family? The boy nodded. And where are they now? Mom is in heaven, Michael said quietly. And Dad? He didn't want me. Carter felt his heart tighten with pain. He remembered how cruelly he had bullied defenseless children like him, and he felt unbearably ashamed. Michael, he said cautiously, do you know that you are a very good boy? The child looked at him in surprise. Really? Really, and what happened to your parents is not your fault. Michael pondered. Then why did Dad say that I was bad? That Mom died because of me? Carter felt something twist inside him. This little boy blamed himself for his mother's death just because some jerk told him that. Listen to me carefully. Carter crouched down to be at eye level with the child. Your dad said something foolish. Adults sometimes say foolish things when they are hurting. You are not to blame for what happened to your mom. How do you know? Michael asked skeptically. Because I used to be bad myself. Very bad. And I know what bad people look like. But you are not one of them. The boy studied Carter's face closely. Are you good now? I'm learning to be good, Carter answered honestly. Every day I'm learning. Michael smiled. The first time during all the time Carter had known him. Can you teach me to be good? Carter felt tears welling up in his eyes. You are already good, Michael. You just need someone to tell you that. Meanwhile, in the next room, Jake was playing a board game with a group of children. One of the boys, 10-year-old David, was constantly cheating, trying to win at any cost. In the past, Jake would have exploded and yelled at the child. But now he understood that this behavior hid a desperate desire to be better than others in something. David, he said quietly, how about we try to play fair? Why? The boy snapped. I'll lose anyway. Who said losing is bad? My dad. He said losers deserve only kicks. Jake froze. Those words were almost an exact copy of what he himself had told his victims at school. Your dad was wrong, he said. Losing is okay. The main thing is to try. You're just saying that so I won't be upset. No. Jake looked the boy in the eyes. I'm saying this because I thought differently for a long time, and it made me a bad person. David blinked in surprise. You're bad? I was bad, very bad. I hurt children who were weaker than me. Why? Because I thought it made me strong, but in reality, it made me pathetic. Jake leaned back in his chair. You know what I realized? True strength is protecting the weak, not hurting them. David thoughtfully nodded and removed the extra tokens he had secretly added to his game board. Meanwhile, in the children's bedroom, Dylan was reading a fairy tale to a group of little ones. Among them was Emily, the red-haired girl who had ended up in the shelter after being bullied at school. When Dylan finished reading, Emily approached him. Can you read another one? Of course. Which one do you want? Cinderella. Dylan opened the book and began reading the story of a girl who was mistreated by her sisters, but ultimately found happiness. Why were the sisters mean? Emily asked. Probably because they were hurting themselves, Dylan replied. Sometimes people do bad things, not because they are bad, but because they don't know how to be good. And the girls at my school did bad things because they were hurting? Dylan felt a pang of guilt. He imagined this little girl justifying her tormentors, trying to find an explanation for their cruelty. Emily, he said softly, it doesn't matter if they are hurting or not. No one has the right to hurt you. But they said it was my fault. They were lying. Dylan crouched down next to the girl's bed. You are not to blame, never to blame. Do you understand? Emily nodded, but doubt still lingered in her eyes. How do you know? She asked. Dylan thought for a moment. He could lie, say something comforting, but this child deserved the truth. Because I used to hurt kids like you, he quietly confessed. And I know we always looked for excuses for our actions. We said the victims were to blame, but that was a lie. Emily looked at him intently. Why did you do that? Because I thought it would make me important, strong. Did it? Dylan shook his head. No, it made me a pathetic coward who could only feel big by belittling the small. The girl pondered. And now you're not like that? I'm learning not to be, every day. Emily reached out and stroked his cheek. I think you're good. Dylan felt tears streaming down his cheeks. This child's forgiveness meant more to him than anything in his life. A month of working at the shelter had changed all three teenagers. They learned to see the pain in the children's eyes, to feel their fears, to understand their needs. But most importantly, they understood what it meant to be responsible for other people's lives. Carter had become particularly attached to 7-year-old Michael, a boy who hardly spoke and constantly drew the same picture: a house, a mom, and himself. Every day, Carter spent several hours with him, slowly earning his trust. Michael, he said quietly one evening, tell me about your mom. The boy looked up from his drawing. She was good. She read me stories. What happened? She got sick, really sick. Then she went to the hospital and didn't come back. Carter felt his heart tighten. This child lost his mother not due to anyone's malice, not because of cruelty, but simply because of illness. And still, he suffered. "What about your dad?" Michael frowned. "Dad said I remind him of Mom, that it hurts him to look at me, and he sent me here." "That's not fair," Carter said sincerely. "What does fair mean?" the boy asked with childlike innocence. Carter thought for a moment. He used to think it was fair that the strong controlled the weak, that he had the right to do whatever he wanted to others because he was more popular, richer, more influential. "Fair is when no one hurts those who can't protect themselves," he said slowly. "Did you hurt others before?" Carter froze. How could he explain the scale of his cruelty to a 7-year-old? "Yes, Michael, I hurt other kids." "Why?" "Because I thought it would make me important," the boy pondered. "Did it?" "No, it made me a bad person." Michael handed him his drawing. "Do you want me to draw you as good?" Carter felt tears welling up in his eyes. This little person, who had endured so much pain, was ready to see the good in him. "Michael, do you know that you are the kindest boy of all the ones I've met?" "Really? Really? And anyone who doesn't appreciate you is just foolish." In the next room, Jake was working with a group of teenagers. Among them was 15-year-old Kevin, the very Korean boy Mrs. Garcia had talked about. Kevin spoke almost no English and always kept to himself. The other kids in the shelter also avoided him, not out of malice, but simply because they didn't know how to communicate with him. Jake remembered how, in his own school, he had bullied similar outsiders, kids who were different from the majority. Now, looking at Kevin, he saw all his victims. "Kevin," he approached the boy cautiously. "How are you?" The teenager looked up in fright. I not understand well." "It's okay, sir. I will help." Jake sat down next to him and took out an English textbook. "Let's study together." Kevin glanced at him skeptically. "Why you help me?" Because I used to hurt kids like you, and now I want to make it right." Kevin studied his face closely. "You were bad? Very bad. And now? I'm learning to be good." The boy nodded. "Good, I also learn." For the next 2 weeks, they spent every evening together. Jake helped Kevin with English, and Kevin told him about Korea, his family, and how scary it was to find himself in a foreign country. "At school, kids hit me," Kevin confessed one day. "They say I shouldn't be here." Jake clenched his fists. He recognized his own actions in this story. "Kevin, that's not true. You have the right to be here. This is your home now." "But I am different." "And that's good. The world would be boring if everyone were the same." Kevin smiled the first time since they met. You can be my big brother?" Jake felt something twist inside him. This boy, having gone through all the humiliation, was still ready to trust him. "Of course, Kevin, I will be your big brother." Meanwhile, Dylan had met 14-year-old Emily, a girl who had ended up in the shelter after being bullied at school. She hardly left her room, always read books, and avoided interacting with other children. "Emily," he called softly, peeking into the room. "Can I come in?" The girl nodded, not looking up from her book. "What are you reading?" "Jane Eyre." "Sad book." "I like sad books," Emily said quietly. "In them, the heroines suffer, but in the end, they find happiness." Dylan sat on the edge of the bed. "Do you believe that happens in real life too?" The girl shrugged. "I don't know. So far, I've only seen suffering." "Tell me what happened at your school." Emily closed the book and was silent for a long time. Then she began to speak in a quiet, monotone voice. "They called me the ugly one. Every day, at every break. They created a group on social media called Emily the Monster. They posted my photos with captions." Dylan listened, feeling nausea rising inside him. "They secretly took pictures of me when I was eating, when I was changing for gym class, when I was crying in the bathroom. And they published them with comments like, 'Look at this fat pig,' or 'Someone should tell her the truth about her appearance.'" "Oh my God." But the worst part was that even those I considered friends joined in. They were afraid that if they stood up for me, they would also become outcasts. Emily opened the book again, but she wasn't reading, just staring at the pages. "Do you know what the scariest thing about bullying is?" she asked. "What?" It's not the bullying itself. It's that you start to believe what they say about you, that you really are ugly, that you deserve to be treated badly. Dylan felt something break inside him. He remembered all the kids he had humiliated along with Carter and Jake. Did they all feel the same way? Emily, he said quietly. I also participated in bullying at another school with other kids. But I did the same thing. The girl lifted her eyes. Why? Because I thought it made me cool. That if I humiliated others, I would become more important myself. And did you? Dylan shook his head. No. I became a pathetic coward who can only feel big by belittling the small. Emily studied his face closely. And do you regret it now? Every second. Then you're not the person you were before. How do you know? Because bad people don't regret. They find excuses. 6 weeks into working at the shelter, an event occurred that changed everything for good. A new child was brought to the shelter, a 13-year-old boy named Lucas. When Carter saw him, he nearly fell over in shock. Lucas was almost an exact copy of Aaron Wells, the very boy they had bullied and tormented at school. The same skinny silhouette, the same frightened eyes behind glasses, the same manner of keeping to himself. What happened to him? Carter asked Mrs. Garcia. Classic story. A group of high schoolers chose him as a target. They filmed themselves beating him up and posted it online. His parents decided it was easier to put him in a shelter than to fight the system. Carter felt panic rising inside him. This boy was a living reminder of his crimes. Lucas sat in the corner of the cafeteria, poking his fork at his food but not eating. He was surrounded by an aura of absolute despair. Hi, Carter cautiously approached him. My name is Carter. The boy looked up. There was so much pain in his eyes that Carter almost turned away. I know who you are, Lucas said quietly. What? Mrs. Garcia told me that you three are former bullies, that you're working here as punishment now. Carter sat down in the chair opposite him. That's true. So you're just like them, like those who tormented me. I was like that, but I don't want to be anymore. Lucas bitterly scoffed. Everyone says that, and then the same thing starts again. Lucas, don't pretend you care. People like you don't give a damn about people like me. We're just entertainment for you. The boy stood up and ran out of the cafeteria. Carter sat there paralyzed by his words. There was so much hatred, so much despair in Lucas's voice that it was terrifying. And he realized this is how Aaron must have felt. These were the very words he wanted to say to him, but didn't have the courage to. That night, Carter couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Lucas, about Aaron, about all the kids they had hurt. In the morning, he found Lucas in the shelter's library. The boy was sitting with a book, but not reading, just staring out the window. Lucas, I need to tell you something. I don't want to listen. Please, it's important. Lucas reluctantly turned to him. There was a boy at my school. His name was Aaron Wells. He was very much like you. Quiet, smart, kind. Carter paused. My friends and I turned his life into hell. We made him do our homework, steal money from his parents, endure humiliation. We blackmailed him with compromising photos. Lucas listened, not taking his eyes off Carter. Aaron tried to ask for help several times, but we convinced him that no one would believe him, that the system was on our side, that resisting would only make his situation worse. And what happened? Carter swallowed. He tried to take his own life. He took a large dose of sleeping pills. Lucas paled. He was saved. They revived him at the hospital. But when he woke up, the first thing he said was, I just wanted the pain to stop. Tears streamed down Carter's cheeks. You know what I realized? That we didn't just torment him. We slowly killed his soul. Day by day, word by word, humiliation by humiliation. Lucas was silent. And now I look at you and see him. I see the same boy who was driven to despair. And I understand that there are millions like you and him. Carter stood up. Lucas, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know, you are not alone. And what they did to you is not your fault. He headed for the exit, but Lucas called out to him. Carter, yes? What's going on with Aaron now? He got into medical school. He wants to become a psychiatrist to help kids who went through the same thing he did. Lucas pondered. Has he forgiven you? Yes. I don't know why, but he has. Maybe because he realized that hatred destroys the one who hates, not the one who is hated. Carter looked at the boy in surprise. How do you know that? I read it in a psychology book. There's a big library here. That same day, the parents of all three teenagers unexpectedly arrived at the shelter. Richard Blake, Judge Martinez with his wife, and Congresswoman Elizabeth Cooper with her husband. Mrs. Garcia greeted them in her office. We want to take our children home, Richard Blake declared. This community service idea has gone too far. Why do you think that? The director asked calmly. Because they are changing, Elizabeth Cooper exploded. Dylan calls every day and talks about some orphans. He cries on the phone. He never cried before. And Jake has become soft, Mrs. Martinez added. Yesterday he saw a news story about homeless animals and started crying. That's not normal for a guy. Carter wants to go to social college, Richard exclaimed. He's abandoned all plans to manage my business. Mrs. Garcia listened carefully to everyone. I'm sorry, but I don't understand the problem. Your children are learning empathy. Empathy is a weakness, Richard barked. In business, you have to be tough. And in court, fair, but not sentimental. Judge Martinez supported him. In politics, rational, not emotional, Congresswoman Cooper agreed. Mrs. Garcia stood up. You know what I'm going to tell you? It's your upbringing that has turned your children into bullies. A tense silence fell. You taught them that strength is more important than kindness, that success is more important than honesty, that money is more important than humanity. She walked to the window. And as a result, they nearly drove a child to suicide. That's not our fault, Richard shouted. No? Who taught Carter that wealth gives the right to humiliate the poor? Who showed Jake that violence solves problems? Who explained to Dylan that lying is better than telling the truth? The parents fell silent. Your children are here for the first time in their lives learning to be human. And you want to take them away? At that moment, the door opened, and Carter, Jake, and Dylan walked into the office. They heard voices and came to see what was happening. Dad? Carter said in surprise. What are you doing here? We're taking you home, Richard replied sharply. Enough playing charity. But I don't want to leave. What? Carter looked at his father with newfound confidence in his eyes. I said I don't want to leave. I'm needed here. You need to finish school and prepare to enter business college. I want to go to social college. Richard turned red. You're not going to work with these losers. You're the heir to an empire. What empire? Carter quietly asked. Built on the suffering of others? You're talking nonsense. No, Dad. Nonsense is what I used to say when I repeated your words about how the weak are meant to be ruled by the strong. Carter stepped forward. You know what I've realized over these weeks? True strength lies in protecting the weak, not in humiliating them. Richard raised his hand to hit his son, but Carter didn't flinch. Hit me, he said calmly. Show everyone how strong you are. The father's hand froze in the air. Meanwhile, Judge Martinez was trying to lead Jake away. Come on, son. A psychiatrist is waiting for you at home. I don't need a psychiatrist anymore, Jake replied. I figured out where my aggression came from. From where? From you, from your example. You always solve problems with force. You yelled at Mom, hit me for discipline, taught me to despise the weak. The judge stepped back. I taught you to be a man. No, you taught me to be an animal. And Congresswoman Cooper was pulling Dylan toward the exit. Enough of this spectacle. We're going home. Mom, stop. What? Dylan broke free from her grip. I'm doing something important for the first time in my life. I'm helping kids who have gone through the same thing as our victims. What victims? It's just school pranks. Mom, one boy almost committed suicide because of our pranks. Elizabeth Cooper paled. That's not true. It is. And you know what's the scariest part? He forgave us, and we don't deserve it. Dylan looked his mother in the eyes. You've fought for justice in politics your whole life, but at home, you taught me that lying is okay if it helps achieve a goal. I didn't. You did, Mom. When you said, say I'm not home, when you asked me to lie about your whereabouts, when you explained that promises to voters are just words. Congresswoman Cooper sank into a chair. Mom, I don't want to be like I used to be. I don't want to be a copy of Dad who lies in court or you who lies to voters. Mrs. Garcia watched the scene with sad satisfaction. Do you see? She quietly said to the parents. Your children have become better, and you want to take them back to their old lives? On the last day of their voluntary work, Mrs. Garcia gathered all three in her office. How do you feel? She asked. Different, Carter honestly replied, like I'm really seeing the world for the first time. And what do you see? Pain. So much pain that we caused without even thinking. Mrs. Garcia nodded. And what do you plan to do with this knowledge? Before anyone could answer, the door opened. Michael Harrison walked into the office. Mr. Harrison? Jake exclaimed. What are you doing here? I came to check on your progress, Michael replied calmly, and to talk to you one last time. He sat across from them. Do you know why I'm really here? The teenagers were silent. Because an hour ago I received a call from the hospital. Aaron Wells is in intensive care. Blood ran cold in their veins. What happened? Dylan whispered. Overdose on sleeping pills. A suicide attempt. Carter felt the world crashing down around him. He left a note, Michael continued. Do you want to know what it says? No one answered. I can't take it anymore. Every day is torture. Carter Blake and his friends broke me. But even now, when they supposedly changed, I can't forget. The scars on my soul don't heal as quickly as others would like. Jake covered his face with his hands. Everyone says to forgive and forget. But how do you forgive those who turned your life into hell? How do you forget the humiliation, the fear, the sleepless nights? Michael paused, letting the words sink in. Maybe they really have changed. Maybe now they're helping other kids. But that doesn't bring back the lost years. It doesn't erase the memories. It doesn't heal the soul. Dylan cried quietly. I'm tired of fighting the pain. Tired of waking up every morning with thoughts of what was done to me. Tired of pretending that everything is okay. Michael took out his phone. If you're reading this, it means I've made my decision. Don't blame yourselves. Just remember, words have power, and some wounds never heal. An oppressive silence hung in the air. But you know what's the most interesting part? Michael leaned forward. Aaron survived. The doctors revived him in time. All three looked up. And when he woke up, the first thing he said was, I don't want them to blame themselves. I just wanted the pain to stop. Carter lifted his head. He's alive? Alive. And you know what else? He asked me to tell you that he forgives you. Still. Tears streamed down the cheeks of all three teenagers. But Aaron's forgiveness doesn't mean that your actions didn't have consequences, Michael continued. He will be healing for a long time. Psychologically, emotionally, perhaps for the rest of his life. Michael stood up. The doctors said he needs support. People who understand his pain. People who know what remorse is. What do you suggest? Carter asked hoarsely. Go see him. Talk. Not to ask for forgiveness. You've already received that. And to show that he is not alone. Michael headed for the exit. Decide for yourselves. But remember, a second chance is not given to everyone, and not always. The hospital room was filled with flowers and cards. Aaron Wells lay on the bed, connected to an IV. He looked much older than his 17 years. When Carter, Jake, and Dylan entered, he slowly turned his head. Hi, he said quietly. Hi, Aaron. An awkward pause hung in the air. How are you feeling? Dylan asked. Alive, Aaron said with a sad smile. That's something. Carter stepped closer. Aaron, don't. We've already talked about this. But I have to, every time we meet. Aaron sighed. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry for everything we did to you. For every day you were afraid to go to school. For every night you couldn't sleep. For every tear you shed because of us. Carter, let me finish. I know words won't change anything. They won't bring back the lost years. They won't erase the memories, but I want you to know, we have changed. Aaron weakly nodded. I know. I've heard about your work at the shelter. Jake moved to the window. Aaron, why did you forgive us? After everything we did? Aaron thought for a moment. Because hate was killing me from the inside. Every day, every minute, I thought about how much I hated you. And I realized I was still allowing you to destroy my life. He sat up on the bed. Forgiveness is not a gift to you. It's a gift to myself, a way to free myself from the pain. But you still tried, Dylan began. Yes, because forgiveness is a process, not a one-time decision. Sometimes the pain becomes stronger than the desire to live. Aaron looked at them. But do you know what stopped me at the last moment? The thought that my death wouldn't change anything. That there would be new victims, new bullies, new tragedies. And what did you decide? That if I want to change the world, I have to stay in it. Aaron reached for the bedside table and picked up a brochure. I applied to medical school. I want to become a child psychiatrist. To help kids like you, Carter asked. To help all kids, both victims and bullies, because both need help. He looked at them seriously. And what are you planning to do next? Carter, Jake, and Dylan exchanged glances. We'd like to create a foundation, Carter said. A foundation to help victims of school violence. And what will it be called? The Aaron Wells Foundation. Aaron raised his eyebrows in surprise. My name? If you don't mind. You have become a symbol of what it means to survive bullying and remain human. Aaron was silent for a long time, then nodded. Okay, but with one condition. What condition? The foundation will help not only victims but also bullies. Rehabilitation programs, psychological help, working with families. Why? Jake asked, surprised. Because most bullies were victims themselves at some point. The cycle of violence needs to be broken, not just punished. The auditorium of Central High School in Springfield was packed. On stage stood 4 young people who looked older than their years. My name is Aaron Wells, the first one began. 3 years ago, I ended up in the hospital after a suicide attempt due to school bullying. The hall fell completely silent. I was humiliated, blackmailed, and turned my life into a nightmare by 3 classmates. Here they stand next to me. Aaron pointed to Carter, Jake, and Dylan. Carter Blake, Jake Martinez, and Dylan Cooper. My former tormentors and now allies in the fight against bullying. A whisper of surprise passed through the audience. You might ask, how is this possible? How can a victim work alongside those who bullied him? Aaron paused. And I will answer, because revenge does not heal wounds. Only understanding, forgiveness, and working together can change the world. Carter stepped up to the microphone. 3 years ago, I was a cruel, selfish person who took pleasure in the pain of others. I thought that strength is measured by the number of people who fear you. He looked around the hall. But true strength lies in the ability to acknowledge your mistakes and change your life for the better. Jake took the microphone. I was an aggressive teenager who solved all problems with my fists. I thought violence was the norm. He shook his head. It took a year of working with orphan children to understand that violence only breeds violence, and love breeds love. Dylan approached the microphone last. I was a weak-willed person who participated in cruelty because I was afraid of being alone. His voice trembled. But loneliness is better than complicity in someone else's suffering. Aaron took the microphone again. In 3 years, our foundation has helped over 1,000 children, both victims of bullying and bullies themselves. We learned the most important thing. Evil can only be defeated by good. He scanned the room. Each of you can become a bully. Anyone can hurt someone weaker, but everyone can also make a different choice. Carter added, the choice to protect instead of attack. The choice to support instead of humiliate. Jake continued, the choice to be human instead of being a beast. Dylan concluded, the choice to love instead of hate. Aaron stepped forward. Remember, your words have power, your actions have consequences, and each of you can change someone's life for the better or for the worse. The hall erupted in prolonged applause. After the speech, a group of teenagers approached them with questions, thanks, and requests for help. A girl about 14 quietly said to Aaron, thank you. I thought no one cared, that I was alone. You are not alone, he replied gently, and you will never be alone as long as we are alive. When the hall emptied, the 4 friends stood on stage embracing. Do you think we changed anything? Carter asked. We tried, Aaron replied, and we will always try. Jake nodded. Some mistakes can't be fixed, but they can be turned into lessons for others. Dylan added, and some wounds become a source of strength. Aaron smiled. You know what's the most amazing thing? 3 years ago, I wanted to die because of you, and now I can't imagine life without you. Why? Carter asked. Because you remind me every day that people can change, that evil is not eternal, that there is always hope. They left the school together, heading to the bus that would take them to the next city, to the next children who need their help, to the next opportunity to show the world that forgiveness is stronger than revenge, and love is stronger than hate, and that every person deserves a second chance. The story ended, But its consequences continue to live in every child who reconsidered bullying a classmate, in every adult who intervened upon seeing injustice, in every person who understood the simple truth. Our actions matter, our words have power, and each of us is capable of changing the world. For better or for worse, the choice is always ours. In Boston, in a small apartment above a bookstore, Michael Harrison was reading a report on the work of Aaron Wells Foundation. Over 3 years, they helped prevent numerous cases of teenage bullying, rehabilitated over 300 aggressive teenagers, and supported 1,000 victims of bullying. A photograph of his daughter Emily hung on the wall, the same one he once made face the wall in a school classroom. Now he could look at her without pain, remembering not only the tragedy, but also the good that was born from that pain. His phone rang. "Michael, it's Aaron." "Hi, son. How are you?" Over the years, they had developed an almost fatherly relationship. Michael had become the mentor Aaron lacked during the toughest times. "Great. We just finished a speech in Chicago. I think we reached a lot of kids. I'm proud of you. Proud of all of you. Michael, I wanted to say thank you for everything." "For what?" "For not letting us all give up. For showing that any pain can be turned into meaning." Michael smiled. "You figured that out yourselves, guys. I just guided you. So where are you headed now?" Michael looked at the letter lying on the table. The school principal in Texas had asked for his help. There were also issues with teenage aggression there. "To Dallas. There are kids there who need help too." "Will we see you again?" "Definitely. Keep saving the world, kids." After the conversation, Michael packed his suitcase. Inside was a worn photograph, him with his wife and little Emily at a family picnic. The picture was taken a month before the tragedy that changed his life forever. Back then, he thought his calling was simply to teach children literature. Now he knew his mission was much deeper, to help children understand that their words and actions have consequences, that everyone can choose to inflict pain or to heal it. And as long as there are people like Aaron Wells, Carter Blake, Jake Martinez, and Dylan Cooper in the world, people who turn their pain into strength and their mistakes into wisdom, humanity has hope, because each of us can change, each can become better, and everyone deserves a second chance.